Okay, well, welcome everyone. Sounds like we've got a pretty good sized audience from a lot of different places all over the country. We have a little more than 100 people registered today, so hopefully people will continue joining us as the program moves forward. Thank you for being here for today's online training session, which is Picturing America Programs for Children. My name is Lainey Castle, and I serve as a project director with the American Library Association's Public Programs Office. To begin, I would like to say a few words on behalf of ALA, as well as set out some basic information about communication in the online classroom, and then we'll move on to today's presentation. As you all know, Picturing America is a major initiative of the National Endowment for the Humanities, through which they've provided American art and history resources to nearly 60,000 schools and public libraries nationally. The project began in 2007, and ALA has been fortunate to work in collaboration with NEH on the project since that time. We're very pleased to be a part of Picturing America and pleased to thank NEH for their ongoing generous support of libraries. I'd also like to thank the Institute for Museum and Library Services, IMLS, for their support. IMLS has provided major funding for Picturing America programs specifically in public libraries, including support for ALA's newly launched resource website, Picturing America for Public Libraries, which can be found online at www.programminglibrarian.org/picturingamerica. Today's training session is being made possible with funding from IMLS. And now, a word about communication in the online classroom. I can see some questions are already coming up. Please do not use the chat feature if you're having technical difficulties. What you can do instead is send a private message to our technical expert, Angela Hanshaw. You can do that by selecting her name from the little pull down in the chat area, and then send a private message to her, and she can help you resolve your issue. Next, we will have a Q&A period, which will be after the main presentation. In order to keep the program on track, we ask that you save your questions until the end, and at that time you will be invited to submit questions for our presenter via the chat feature. And finally, if you are having technical problems during the session, don't panic. The complete presentation is being recorded and will be available for download after the program's conclusion. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our presenter, Wendy Lukehart. Wendy is the Youth Collections Coordinator at the District of Columbia Public Library. She has been involved in engaging children with books through the arts in public libraries throughout her career, starting in Bethlehem and Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and continuing in Washington, D.C. She served on the 1997 Caldecott Committee, the 2006 Society of Illustrators Jury, the 2007 Seibert Committee, and is currently chairing the ALSC Committee for the 2010 pre-conference, Drawn to Delight, How Picture Books Work and Play Today. Wendy is a member of Capital Choices and the Washington, D.C. Children's Book Guild. She also writes articles and reviews for School Library Journal. We are so happy and so lucky to have Wendy with us today to share her experiences using visual thinking strategies and the whole book approach to bring Picturing America collections to life for young audiences. So without further delay, I will hand the microphone over to Wendy. And we'll just give Wendy a moment here to get everything all set up with her presentation.
Thank you, Lainey. Now, can you hear me? Great. Okay, sorry for the delay. I was working with the microphone. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to have this opportunity to introduce the particular techniques that librarians at the District of Columbia Public Library have used to present Picturing America children's programs. Last year, when I heard that our library was receiving a set of these high-quality posters of American art for each site, I couldn't have been more excited. Our children's and teen librarians had just received special training from staff at the Eric Carle Museum of Picture Book Art. They had new knowledge that could bring these images to life for any age group and help them use related books in ways that would continue the focus on the visual. You don't have to be an art historian to be successful with these methods, but there are concepts about how people learn, and there is vocabulary about book design that will enhance your ability to conduct the programs. So in addition to providing overviews of the program methodologies, I will include overviews and websites where you can discover more about the techniques and training if you're interested. Today's presentation will include an overview of the programming models we learned about at the Eric Carle Museum, and one of these was Visual Thinking Strategies, or VTS, which is a way to support beginning viewers in making meaning out of what they see. And if you were able to tune in to the webinar last Tuesday, you had the good fortune to hear Oren Slosberg, the Executive Director of Visual Understanding and Education. Oren did a terrific job of demonstrating and analyzing VTS in this virtual environment. I will cover some of the same ground in the beginning of this presentation, but I'm coming at the material from a different vantage point, so hopefully you won't be inclined to run out to the staff refrigerator while I introduce VTS for participants who are new this week. We will also be covering the whole book approach, a method to share the text, art, and design of the picture book in a way that encourages audience participation. And finally, I will describe sample programs using these methods with specific posters and books. By the way, in this picture is Mary Phelan, one of our intrepid children's librarians, who would be happy to serve as a resource person, along with Toroitich Cherano, whom you'll see in a little while, if you want to talk to or email practitioners. So let's get started. Imagine you are charged to do a program with this, and these, or these, or these. Relax. The beauty of visual thinking strategies is that you can use the same set of questions and the same approach with any age group and any picture that has narrative elements. So what exactly is VTS? Well, VTS is the name of a sequential curriculum that can be used in schools. The heart of the method is a framework for looking at isolated images. Thus, the process works beautifully as a way to program with Picturing America posters. To give you a brief background, VTS is the work of Abigail Housen, a Harvard-trained cognitive psychologist, and Philip Yenawine, a museum educator at the Museum of Modern Art. Yenawine was challenged by the museum board to figure out what people learned from a museum visit. Housen, working on her doctoral thesis, was trying to understand how people developed their interest in and knowledge about art. Their paths crossed, and their complementary perspectives gave rise to VTS. Housen has interviewed thousands of museum goers over the years and now believes there are 5 stages a person could be in, aesthetically speaking. Most people of any age are in stage 1 or 2 of her paradigm. They are looking for narratives, filtering a picture through personal experience, as opposed to thinking symbolically or on a more universal level. So for general or young audiences, it's helpful to choose pictures that have potential stories. The discussion questions at the early stages, the ones we'll be seeing today, are designed to probe for possible narrative threads and connections. And while Housen and Yenawine use VTS to support viewers in developing visual literacy, you can formulate your own goals. When used to conduct individual programs, for example, it encourages the most interesting conversations. Let me pause for a moment and say that the VTS website, pictured here, has a wealth of information on the development and implementation of visual thinking strategies, as well as the dramatic academic achievement that results whenever it is adopted by school districts, as it has been in San Antonio, Boston, and Byron, Minnesota, to name a few. I encourage you to explore this fascinating site and watch some of the video footage of the methods in action. You will be moved by the sensitive responses of the diverse group of children in these clips, I guarantee it. You can also learn about training opportunities at a city near you or about bringing training to your site. To use VTS, the necessary ingredients are a group, a facilitator, and an interesting image. The session starts with silence as everyone studies the picture. Then, these 3 simple questions form the basis of a thoughtful exchange that challenges kids to really look. The depth of the conversation and the time they are willing to spend talking may surprise you. Children are genuinely responsive when someone really cares about what they have to say. The facilitator's first question is carefully phrased to elicit more than a one-word response. So it's not, "What do you see?" which would just bring forth a list, but rather, "What's going on?" so kids will start to look for narrative, for meaning. The second question is asking the child to offer visual proof for his or her opinion. This method is implicitly conveying that anyone is entitled to his or her own opinion, as long as it can be backed up with visual evidence. This non-judgmental environment, where each person's contribution is valued and there are no wrong answers, is key to its success. It paves the way for children to take risks and respond. One of the beauties of this method is that it is an enriching experience for a child regardless of IQ or ability. High and low achievers have something to contribute when it comes to responding to a picture. Another plus is that children who are typically shy or hesitant to speak because English is their second language are motivated to talk when they are intrigued by an image. A striking picture and a captive audience appear to be an irresistible combination. And the idea that there are many right answers when exploring a work of art is quite liberating. There's another point I want to make, and while the setting for this point is school, public libraries and schools share a common target audience, and having a trick up your sleeve that adds value to your service when developing a school partnership or talking to your library board or city council can only be a good thing. When the VTS pattern, and this question in particular, becomes a habit of thinking for a young person, it can be applied across disciplines. Think of science, for example. And it can be applied on every standardized test known to man. Any child can tell you about the dreaded BCR, or brief constructed response, they practice day in and day out in school from about first grade through high school. They have to read a passage and answer a question using information from the passage to support their response, even in math. Other portions of the test involve the same type of skill, but instead of writing, they are doing this. Schools in Washington are spending a great deal of instructional time lately on this higher order thinking skill. Teachers who have been successful in maintaining urban children's reading achievement have devoted large portions of time to discussions, during which students must give reasons why one answer is better than another. When I read these findings in a text on struggling readers, I couldn't help noticing that VTS encourages the same sort of reasoning needed to be successful on these tests, but in a very pleasant package. This offers you a compelling tool for your programmatic toolkit, whether you simply want to use it as a program framework or as a selling point for some larger educational or strategic goal. And there's a lot of information about this on the VTS website. The third question that you ask in VTS, "What else can we find?" allows time to examine the image more thoroughly, finding things that otherwise might be missed. This question is asked frequently, sending the message to dig deeper. It can also be used when you feel the audience has dwelled on some aspect long enough. Now that might sound pretty easy. You just have 3 questions to remember, right? And in contrast to what a docent does in a museum setting, you don't have to prepare a monologue filled with dates, biographical details, or a formal analysis, because you want the children to be doing the intellectual work. There are other things you need to be doing, however. As the children describe what they see, you are pointing to the related areas of the picture. This helps to focus everyone. Here, the VTS facilitator is one of the young people in our Teens of Distinction program, Megan Thompson. The children's librarian in the white sweater is Toroitich Cherno. We'll see more of them, literally, in future slides. After each child has finished speaking, you paraphrase his or her thoughts. This ensures that everyone can hear the ideas. It indicates that you value and understand the opinion of that child. It gives you a chance to sensitively build correct grammar and expand the group's vocabulary, since you are paraphrasing, not overtly correcting. For example, in response to what's going on in this picture, a child might say, "The people are playing music. The people in the front are bigger than the people in the back. And that guy in the back playing banjo is sort of in the same position as the guy in the front. They seem kind of tired." You would respond by pointing and paraphrasing with slightly enhanced vocabulary, something like this. "So, Jared is saying that the figures in the foreground appear to be larger than the figures in the background, and that their positions echo one another, creating a pattern. Jared thinks they look weary. What do you see that makes you say that, Jared?" He would then have to justify his opinion in terms of their posture, facial expressions, and so on. A third job of the facilitator is accepting ideas that surprise you or seem wrong. You paraphrase, as always, and ask, "What do you see that makes you say that?" The child may have an interesting reason. He or she may see something you don't, or other children in the group may offer opposing opinions, which leads to another role you have, linking comments. Your ability to keep track of ideas, connecting them to similar opinions expressed earlier, or pointing out when people disagree, will ratchet up the level of the experience. It takes practice, but it helps the group learn to defend and revise their thinking based on new information, 2 very valuable skills. Now, being librarians, we are likely to have read up on the image or the artist and be dying to share our knowledge. Children get the most out of this method if it remains an experience initially of what they can find out by looking at the picture. It is counterproductive to introduce the sense that there are right and wrong answers during this portion where you are encouraging risk-taking. But you are in a library, so ideally you'll have prepared a book element as a follow-up, whether it's sharing a picture book, as we're going to discuss in a moment, or having a display. In either case, when the conversation has reached a natural ending point, 15 or 20 minutes or longer, depending on the kid's interest in your agenda, you can easily capitalize on the curiosity they now have about the poster by segueing to either helping them find information in the books, telling them what you learned in your reading, if they're younger or if time is a factor, or sharing a related story with the whole group. Thinking of all of the wonderful picture books available for a spectrum of ages and themes, a small committee at the DC Public Library set out to identify ones that would relate to specific posters and that would be rich enough in design to deserve extended attention. In the process, we found that the posters provide a terrific way to market our books and media collections, and that the whole book approach is a wonderful way to continue the focus on the visual, as well as the welcoming, thought-provoking atmosphere established through VTS. So how does the whole book approach work, and why is it a great way to share picture books? The method was developed by Megan Lambert, instructor of children's literature at the Eric Carle Museum. Early in her employment at the museum, she realized that it would make more sense in her setting to focus on the visual excitement of the books she was sharing than to worry about themes in her programs, a situation which can sometimes lead to choosing books that address a theme but aren't that great. Her method, characterized by reading with children rather than to them, is also ideal for library settings, as it raises awareness of how each part of the book, from the jacket and the gutters to the medium and typography, contributes to the narrative. We decided to try to find at least one book to use in each program, in addition to a large quantity for display, that connected thematically, historically, or stylistically to the poster we had selected, and one that was also worthy visually. If a book was perfect otherwise, perhaps it conveyed a pertinent historical anecdote, but did not lend itself to extensive discussion of design, it could, of course, still be used in a traditional manner. As Megan is always quick to point out, there's no one right way to share a book. I had seen Megan using the whole book approach with a group of toddlers at the Carl Museum, and I mention this to indicate that this method can also be used with any age group. She held up Peter Siss's fire truck and applied a modified version of VTS to the book jacket, asking, "Do you think this is a book about airplanes?" "No," they all said. "What do you see that makes you say that?" she asked. The children had to justify their responses by looking for visual evidence, the fire trucks all over the cover, and of course they were thrilled to do so. Megan then asked, "Why do you think these end papers are red?" Notice she's not dumbing down her vocabulary. And so it went. As she read the text, she was asking them to hone in on specific parts of the book design or a detail in a scene, or she was responding to their questions or observations. Context and repetition allow for the children's comprehension of book-specific language, and young children become as facile with discussing the gutter as they do about paleontology when they fall in love with dinosaurs at around age 3. It simply becomes something that interests them, a fun puzzle to solve. The method encourages children to look closely and think critically about every aspect of the book, art, text, and design, in terms of what it contributes to the whole, so they can enjoy everything the picture book has to offer. Any aspect of the book design, style, or media is fair game for these conversations with kids. As with VTS, it is helpful to view yourself as a facilitator, guiding the children in building their understanding of the story that emerges from the visual and the verbal threads. Your job is to read the text, manage their questions and comments, and ask thought-provoking questions about the design elements. Before we look at some of those elements, I wanted to draw your attention to the Carl's website, where you can find out more about their workshops and the method. I won't stop to explore it here since we may have varying connection speeds, but you can see that this education page offers files on VTS, the whole book approach, and under professional development, workshop information. This link offers a brief clip of Megan demonstrating the whole book approach at the Carl, and I encourage you to access it after today's program. I thought it might be useful for you to see some whole book questions applied to titles we have matched with the posters. So we'll start with the ledger book of Thomas Blue Eagle, which could be used with older children, and poster 8B, Sans Arc Lakota ledger book. Megan recommends that you look carefully at a book before sharing it, thinking about what elements are particularly notable. Perhaps the format or orientation of the book is significant, as it is here. So you might ask children why they think this story, featuring an American Indian and a horse, is in the landscape format, a horizontal orientation, instead of a portrait format, which is vertical. You're wanting to tease out the notion that the landscape format works well for stories about journeys or movement, since we generally move horizontally, not up and down, unless of course we're on a trampoline or a rocket ship. Conversely, if the book has a portrait or vertical format, ask why. In this case, Myers wanted our eyes to rise above the buildings to the character in flight. This would also be a great book to use to help children focus on the book jacket art and how the cover helps grab their attention. There is not time to ask the VTS questions on every page of the book, but the cover is often a great place to ask what's going on in this picture and proceed with what do you see that makes you say that if the child doesn't offer specific supporting details. Here we're looking at the end papers in Romeo Bearden's picture book Lil Dan the Drummer Boy, which could be paired with the poster of the Bearden collage called The Dove, if you wanted children to see that Bearden also created children's books. Megan describes the end papers as a visual overture for the book. The idea here is to figure out what question to ask that helps children connect what they see on the end papers with either the jacket or what they anticipate the story to be about. So asking, how does this scene on the end papers connect to what we noticed on the cover? Or, how do you think the end papers are preparing us for what's going to happen in the story? Would help children realize that this is a part of the book worth looking at too. This is the poster that inspired the use of that book. The fact that the gutter, or the space where the two pages meet at the binding, could be used to explore psychological or physical distance was a design revelation to me. I had previously thought about the gutter only when a double spread was poorly composed and a face was cut in half or something. Here, in Staten Rabin's Mr. Lincoln's Boys, illustrated by Bagram Ibatulin, we have several visual clues that old General so-and-so, as the text reads, is not amused at the boys' hijinks, and the placement of the gutter reinforces the tension between the two men. I find this gutter idea so intriguing I had to share another example. Here's a Civil War battle scene from Nikki Giovanni's Lincoln and Douglas, illustrated by Brian Collier. And I couldn't fit the whole book on the scanner, so you're not seeing all of the right page. But notice Collier's use of the gutter and the drama created as the Union soldier advances across it. Either of the books could be shared with poster 9B, Alexander Gardner's evocative photograph of Lincoln. These are the last two design elements we'll discuss. My apologies to author Barry Denenberg and illustrator Christopher Bing for having to crop their very large book, portrait format I might add, so that you could compare the two styles of typography. While it would be unlikely that you would read the very dense title on the left in a program, you could book talk it, and its formal font, looking like it came right out of a 19th century printer's box, contrasts with the whimsical high-energy choice on the right. It's hard to tell from this slide, but that title is embossed in copper, suggesting perhaps a connection to the coin in which Lincoln's face appears. Composition, style, and medium are among the other design elements that can be explored as you proceed through a book. But in the interest of time, I'll move on to an example of a program that we implemented in DC. I was particularly eager to share the poster depicting sample ledger book pages. I had lived for a time in central Pennsylvania near the site of the Carlisle Indian School and Dickinson College, which has some wonderful examples of the ledger book art form. Here is Dickinson's website if you're interested. The Plains Indians had a long tradition of painting images of their hunts or important events in the life of their nation on buffalo skins. Their art had particular characteristics, usually figures viewed in profile, rendered in flat colors. When trading posts started to carry ledger books, or sadly when buffalo hides dwindled, or native children were forced into white schools, this paper, with its distinctive blue lines, offered another medium for preserving important memories. You can see that the blue lines were worked into the dress patterns here. This is a very accessible piece for kids because they all have composition books, and many of their pages are decorated with their own art, so they are intrigued that the Indians used them too. After using VTS with these scenes, we talked with the third graders about the American Indians and this art form. We then shared This Land Is My Land by George Littlechild. We wanted the children to be aware that the ledger book and picture book artists are both from the Plains culture, and the fact that Littlechild is a contemporary artist of native descent adds an interesting dimension. They saw some of the similarities in style. They explored the nuances of the title. They were familiar with Woody Guthrie's classic song, This Land Is Your Land, and they were interested to explore the possible reasons for the change in title. I then asked them, why do you think the publisher chose blue for the end papers? I'll never forget one girl's answer. She said, "It's the color of freedom." I asked her to tell me more. She spread her arms wide and said, "You know, the color of sky and water." It is these kinds of conversations that make the whole book approach such a rewarding experience for all involved. Another author-illustrator who offers contemporary interpretations of the ledger book style is S.D. Nelson. Like Blackhawk, the Picturing America artist, he is of Lakota descent. You can find books that we suggest for programs and others for book talking and displays in program guides that our committee has prepared and posted on the Picturing America website, and we're still working on more, so in a little while we should have some more up there. After sharing the poster and at least one book using the whole book approach, and again we use that for the focus on the visual, we present 1 or 2 sentence book talks about a stack of related books to encourage the children to read more. Our guides also offer craft and musical elements for those who are so inclined. Some of our librarians distributed composition books and colored pencils for children to keep towards the conclusion of the program, if the group was small. Others simply gave a blue-lined page for children to record a special memory. As an aside, we've been discussing what to do with the posters that depict objects rather than paintings or photographs, because the question, what's going on in this picture, does not quite work with a pot or a quilt. A conversation with Dr. Sharon Schaefer, Executive Director of the Smithsonian Early Enrichment Center, helped me hone in on the path we need to explore next, the concept called object-based learning. In this framework, an object might be a cultural artifact, like this pot, or a natural specimen, like a seashell. As Sharon describes it, through observation, conversation, and activities, students are encouraged to notice details about physical features, make comparisons with similar objects, organize and classify collections by size or by function or by origin, and extract meaning. They might make assumptions about its role in the environment or society. This method certainly has much in common with VTS, but it opens up the possibility of discussing function and historical and social context as well. I can imagine bringing in different types of vessels for children to have a hands-on experience, talking about what they are made of and for, who uses them, where they may have come from, and how they compare with the Maria Montoya Martinez pot depicted on the poster. Like VTS, this is a great way to arouse the kind of curiosity that can be fed with library resources, as one of our librarians did using nonfiction adult books showing Martinez at work, and then using this book about a potter who uses a similar process. If you're interested in more about object-based learning, there's a wonderful article called Teaching with Collections that you can download from the Smithsonian Early Enrichment Center website. The sky is the limit when it comes to the way these posters can be used. They lend themselves to creating attractive exhibits, as we've done here at the Lamond Riggs Neighborhood Library. They also provide a wonderful focal point to promote related books and media. The Bearden poster led to a program featuring the contemporary African American children's book illustrators you see represented here, who were inspired by Bearden. And of course, it offered the chance for children to create their own collages. But we believe that the most amazing of all is the quality of the discussion the posters can provoke when shared with kids in a setting where there are many right answers. So thank you for tuning in today, and I'm happy to take any questions.
This is Lainey. Thank you so much, Wendy. And thanks to everyone for being here. Hopefully, if you do have some questions, you can submit them via chat. I can read them off for Wendy to answer. Looks like we have one coming in here. I can let Wendy go ahead and answer this. Wendy, let me know if you need any backup for questions.
Okay, I just put the website back up again, so can you see that? Great. Let me know if there's anything else I can answer for you, or if you'd like to contact anybody here in DC about reading with the children. Yes, that's a term. Yes, that's a term that Megan uses. She characterizes the whole book approach as a totally interactive experience. So as she's going through with the narrative, she's interrupting herself in very intentional ways to ask targeted questions like about the cover, using the VTS question on the cover, or starting with the end papers, or she might pause during the narrative to address a design element. So it's much more interactive. It's not sitting down and reading the story to them. And she also responds to cues that they give her, either a question the child might ask, or if they're really young, she might respond to a physical to something physical that the child is doing. She gives an example of the Very Hungry Caterpillar, where a child is hunching up his shoulders, and she's saying, "Oh, look, Sammy is being the caterpillar," that kind of thing. So it's a much more interactive experience. Go back to the Dickinson website. I will try to do that. There we go. The programs really vary from 5 kids to, you can do it with 30 kids, or the poster, the programs with the posters you can do with up to 60 kids or more, or you can, it just depends how well the audience can see. And with a book, if you wanted to do that with a larger group, if you have a way to project the book or something, obviously what the children can see limits how many children you can have in the group, but you really can use it with a wide range of numbers. Exactly, it is dialogic reading, and she draws on dialogic reading as well as Reggio Emilia ideas of child-centered learning. She draws on lots of ideas in coming up with whole book approach. We've included some music with the ideas that we have, but you might want to, for example, we have a CD with some Native American songs on it, but you might want to think about adding to the website if you have other ideas. A Waldorf style. Yes, I'm a little bit familiar with that style. I love this interactive method. let's see, Deborah's question, maybe Lainey can answer that one. I'll turn the mic off here.
Deborah, yes, there is, and we very much encourage all of you to log on. It's www.programminglibrarian.org/picturing America. I'll type this in the chat in just a moment, or maybe Wendy can put up the slide. There's a forum. It's accessible via the left-hand navigation, and it's just a place for the approximately 3,500 public libraries participating in Picturing America. Thank you, Angie. There's the link to log on, share what they're doing, pose questions of each other. Our project advisors check the site, the ALA staff checks the site, and we are certainly doing what we can to drive traffic there. So please, by all means, it's been an underutilized area of the site, and we do encourage you to share ideas, pose questions, and use each other as resources there.
I wanted to, as some of you have talked about the interactive aspect of this type of programming, and I just wanted to say, you know, it amazes me what's going on in kids' mind, like the child who said the blue end papers were the color of freedom. I mean, I suppose kids are sitting there having those kinds of thoughts, and we never give them a chance to talk. So often we do our programs as the presenter, you know, as the performer, and it can be so rich when we allow them to participate. And I think that's what's been the rewarding part for us, is to realize, and maybe they wouldn't be sitting there thinking about it if you didn't ask the question. That's another idea, you know, if we can ask them provocative questions, imagine what we can help them think about. Is anyone else using posters in story time? And that's the great thing about this method. With VTS, you really truly can use it with any age group. The questions are so versatile. You can respond where the kids are. That's great that some of you are already incorporating them. Oh, great. Intergenerational programs. Well, maybe some of you will share the programs on the website. Sure. Back to you, Lainey.
I was just going to say, in addition to using the forum on the website, you can also send any programming materials that you've developed, reading lists, anything more extensive that can't be well communicated on the forum. You can email that to picturingamerica@ala.org, and we can consider that content for just posting on the site so that others can access it. Let's see, where will the presentation be archived? On the Picturing America for Public Libraries website, it's under programming on the left navigation item, and then online learning opportunities. Everything that we've done, I think we have about 5 sessions right now. They're all archived there, and this one should be up within maybe 24 hours. And from there, you can log on and sort of view the entire session just exactly as it has occurred, or you can print the presentation, sort of the PowerPoint presentation, if you'd like to use it that way. Thank you, Angie. There's the link. And for anyone who hasn't really gone to the site, I can just take 1 second, in the absence of other questions, to plug some of the other resources we have on there. You should all, as Picturing America grant recipients, have a user ID, and if you don't, it's easy to request one on the website. From there, you can download all of these images so that you can project them on screen and have a larger visual to speak to and work with larger groups of kids. We have audio files that are basically the introductions that are in the teacher's resource books, so that you can provide audio tours in your library for kids, for adult audiences, and we're continuing to add resources throughout the fall, winter, and probably into the spring. This is actually an invitation-only session for public librarians, and it just has to do with the funding from IMLS being focused on resources for public libraries. This is in part because the resources for school librarians on EdCitement and in the teacher's resource guide are so rich, and we were looking to provide a way to reach out specifically to public libraries, but we probably should be working with the NEH staff to kind of cross-reference these resources to be sure that they're available to school librarians. VTS is very much a methodology that is perfect for teachers and for use in schools. We have about another 10 minutes in the classroom. In the absence of any other questions, though, we can certainly just end early. I'd just like to take a moment to thank Wendy for all of her help putting together this presentation, working with us in a new technical environment, and just all of her flexibility and hard work to get this all together. And thanks to all of you for coming. We hope that we'll see you online on our website, and please do send your feedback, suggestions, comments, things that would be helpful that occur to you after the session to us at picturingamerica.ala.org.